A few years back, I moved to a new city, not in the busy center, but somewhere on the edge, where it felt more like a small, quiet town. The houses were spaced far apart, the streets were calm, and the silence was almost too peaceful. My new home was small but cozy, and even though I didn't know anyone there, I didn't mind much. I was never the outgoing type anyway, so I mostly stayed to myself, unpacking and trying to get used to my new surroundings. A few days after settling in, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before answering. At the door stood a tall, older man with messy black hair and a patchy beard. He introduced himself as Todd, a neighbor who lived a few houses down. He said he just wanted to welcome me to the neighborhood. He smiled and tried to make small talk, asking the usual questions: where I moved from, why I chose this place, and whether I was living alone. At the time, nothing about the conversation felt strange. He told me he lived with his wife Sarah, and they both loved how quiet the area was. After a few minutes of chatting, he wished me luck with unpacking and left. Todd seemed like a genuinely friendly person, maybe just trying to make me feel welcome. He was at least 20 years older than me, so I didn't think we'd ever be close friends. But it was comforting to know someone nearby wasn't a complete stranger. The next few days were uneventful. I spent time walking around and exploring the neighborhood, but something felt off. I rarely saw anyone outside. No one sat on their porches. No kids were playing in the yards. The streets always looked empty, almost abandoned. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt heavy, like something was missing. It was unsettling, like I was the only person living there. A few days later, around 4 p.m., Todd stopped by again. This time, he invited me to a small dinner gathering he and his wife were hosting that night with some neighbors. He said it would be a good chance to meet everyone and make some friends. Honestly, I was surprised. I hadn't seen anyone around, and I figured people here preferred to stay to themselves. But the thought of finally meeting others in the area sounded nice, so I agreed to come. Todd seemed pleased and said he'd see me there at 7:30. I felt both nervous and excited. Meeting new people was never easy for me, but I told myself it would be good to socialize. When 7:30 came, I got ready and walked to Todd's house. The streets were as dark and empty as ever. No lights, no movement, not a single sign of activity. The silence made the air feel heavy again. When I reached Todd's place, everything looked normal except for one thing. There were no cars outside, no sound coming from inside. It didn't feel like a gathering was happening. Still, I walked up to the door. It was already slightly open, but I knocked anyway. "Come on in, make yourself at home," Todd's voice called out from inside. It echoed strangely through the quiet house. There were no other voices, no background noise, no laughter or conversations you'd expect from a group dinner. I stepped inside, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows across the walls. I followed the direction of his voice toward the kitchen, but when I got there, the room was empty. No Todd, no Sarah, no food, no table set for guests, nothing. I called out his name. No response. I called for his wife, too, but again, nothing. Then the reality hit me. I was alone in the house. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut behind me. The loud sound made my heart skip. Panic started to creep in. I shouted Todd's name again, but the silence was suffocating. My instincts screamed at me to leave. I hurried toward the front door, but when I reached it, it was locked. Not once, but 3 times, someone had locked me in. Fear rushed through me like never before. I tried unlocking the door as quickly as I could. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow and heavy, coming from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see whoever or whatever was there. I kept fumbling with the locks. Then Todd's voice called out again. This time, it wasn't friendly. It was deeper, colder, and he asked me where I thought I was going. His footsteps grew louder as he approached. Finally, I got the last lock undone, yanked the door open, and ran. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I sprinted all the way home. When I got inside, I grabbed my phone and considered calling the police. Part of me wondered if I was overreacting, but no, something wasn't right. I called them. A few minutes later, as I waited for them to arrive, Todd appeared outside my house. He banged on my door. He peered through my windows. It felt like he was hunting me. Before the police arrived, Todd left. But things got even more disturbing after that. During questioning, the officers told me something I didn't expect. There was never any planned neighborhood dinner. Todd didn't have a wife named Sarah. In fact, he had been living alone in that house for more than 10 years. Everything he told me about his wife, about the dinner, about the other neighbors, was all a lie. He made it all up to trick me into coming over. But because he hadn't actually done anything illegal, there was nothing the police could do. There was no proof of his intentions, even though it was obvious to everyone that something sinister was going on. I didn't wait around to see what would happen next. As soon as I could, I packed my things and moved out of that neighborhood. It's been years now, but sometimes I still think about Todd. Every once in a while, I search for his name online, hoping to see news that he's been arrested. Because I know, if he hasn't been caught yet, he's probably still out there waiting, lying, and planning to lure someone else into his home. And the thought of what he might have done to me if I had done escaped that night still chills me to my core. The memory of that night never really leaves me. It's a reminder of how close I came to becoming part of a much darker story. And whenever I think about that creepy neighbor, I can't help but feel that somewhere he's still watching for his next victim.